Okay, let me welcome all of you to our workshop on the City Nature Challenge and iNaturalist. I'm Liz Paul with the Golden Eagle Audubon chapter. We're one of the sponsors of City Nature Challenge. And because it's such an awesome way to just get a real big view of what is out there, what is in our community, how wild are we? And it's such a great participatory event as well, since people of all ages can do it, and you don't have to climb to mountaintops or anything like that. And it is coming up April 28th to May 1st. You'll probably hear that over and over again this evening. And once we learn a little bit more about it, then I can tell you about what one of the events Golden Eagle Audubon is doing for this. But we're really lucky today that you don't have to depend on me to explain it all. Kristin Gnowjewski, who works with the City of Boise Parks and Recreation Department in the, we're going to call it the Volunteer and Ecology Department. And she has wide responsibilities for habitat and volunteer activities along the Boise River. And if that wasn't enough, she is the moving force behind the City of Boise and the partners participating in the City Nature Challenge. I don't remember if this is maybe the 4th year or something. She'll be able to tell us in a minute here. But it is it's no small feat to hook in with the whole huge enterprise that's the City Nature Challenge, and then also make it happen in the community. It can't just be all talk. You actually have to go out there and do it. So unless there's any questions for me right now, put your questions in the chat while Kristin is talking, and you can put yourselves all on mute, and you can turn off your video too. Kristin's gonna share her screen with us, and we'll focus on her, and we'll have plenty of time, I think, for questions at the end. All right, take it away, Kristin.
All right, thanks so much, Liz, for that introduction, and thanks to those of you who are joining us this evening. I'm super excited to share some information about this event and about iNaturalist. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Oops, hit the right button. And we will get started. And let's see. Are we good to go, Liz?
You bet. Looks awesome.
All right. Thank you so much. So, yeah, I'm going to start out talking about just a little bit about community science, which has also been known as citizen science, and the history of iNaturalist. And then most of the presentation will be focused on how to use iNaturalist, both to make observations and also to do identifications, and a little bit about how the data are used. And then we'll end up just talking about how you can use iNaturalist to participate in the City Nature Challenge. So I'm not really sure how the reactions work, but we'll try this. So how many of you have participated in some form of community science? Maybe if you could give a thumbs up reaction to that, if that works. I do know that many birders use eBird, so you may be familiar with that. But community-based science is essentially enlisting volunteers who may or may not have any expertise within the realm that they're collecting data to go out and collect some sort of data. Most of these are collections. Some projects involve analysis or experimental design, but it's really a wonderful way to engage your neighbors in exploring your local area or beyond. And from the scientific perspective, it really allows scientists to gather data well beyond perhaps what their funding might allow, and also beyond geographic barriers such as private landscapes where they might not be able to go. one thing I really love about community science is how it connects people of all ages and allows you to form a community of people who have mutual interests that you may not connect with through any other ways. And of course, it's good for your health. You're out learning and exploring. So the app that I'm really going to focus on today is, as I mentioned earlier, is iNaturalist. Excuse me for one moment. So iNaturalist was created by a group of researchers or students at UC Berkeley in the School of Information Sciences in, I believe, 2008. And since then, it has been taken on as a joint venture between California Academy of Sciences and the National Geographic Society. And it's essentially it's a community. It's a community of people making observations of the natural world that then communicate through the platform about those observations across the entire globe. There's a global network of iNaturalist kind of hubs that you can see on that bottom map there, translated into all different languages. There's a whole suite of volunteers that work on doing translations, and the taxonomy is constantly updated as well. But it's kind of hard to encapsulate everything that iNaturalist is, but I think this quote from their webpage really does a good job. So it's not only a social network, but it's a way to collect and share biodiversity information. And this community really helps each other in a supportive way to learn about the natural environment. So I've been using iNaturalist for many years, but when I first started using it, was sort of, I would take a picture and forget about it. And then I wasn't using it very frequently, I guess I would say. And several years ago, I was participating in a citizen science project called the Pacific Northwest Bumblebee Atlas. And so I was very interested in looking at bumblebees. And I happened to notice this strange bee in my yard that didn't quite fit the description of a bumblebee. So I took a picture of it and I posted it on iNaturalist and sort of forgot about it for a while. And when I went back, there was this whole conversation, which I'll show you later in the presentation, about that photo. And it turns out that that bee that I didn't know what it was when I took the photo was an Eastern carpenter bee. And some of the conversation was with this woman who's an entomologist at the University of Montana. And she was very interested in confirming this observation. And eventually I was able to collect a sample of this bee, a specimen, and send it off to Montana, and it became part of her a research paper. And so it was one of the first documented observations of this bee in Idaho. Mostly they are east of the Rockies. So I tell you this because this is what really got me hooked on iNaturalist, the fact that I could just go in my backyard, take a picture of something that I thought was really interesting, and that it turned out to be something very interesting scientifically as well, which I honestly, when I first started using it, never thought was going to happen. So it was just something really exciting that kind of got me hooked at the beginning. So I want to share this little video clip, and I know there's some people on here who are very familiar with plants. The plants that this video shows might make your skin crawl a little bit. It's a very weedy yard, but I think this video clip, it's about 3 minutes, does a really good job of kind of explaining iNaturalist and the power that it has to help you learn about the world around you.
I've been observing my yard now for about 3 years, and I've observed over 200 species. iNaturalist is especially exciting because whether you're identifying or uploading observations, you get to learn about all of the plants and living things that are in your part of the world. The more creatures that I found, the more plants that I found, as I started uploading more observations from my backyard, I couldn't believe that in this little space right next to a city, I could just keep finding more species. And so it started to become a challenge to me. How many creatures can I find in this space? Every year, whether it's the weather patterns or seed dispersal is different or the migration patterns are different, it's a new ecosystem. It just keeps changing. There are these things living all around us that we have no idea are there. So I was really drawn into iNaturalist as I started uploading more observations from my backyard. One of the most important things when you're uploading an observation is to have multiple photos to make sure you're showing different parts of the living creature or plant, and also to make sure you put in your guess as to what it is. So a lot of people will not put in a guess, and those sometimes end up not getting identified because they don't go into a filter for the experts to look at it. There is also an AI feature called computer vision that gives you suggestions for what it thinks you may be looking at. And even if you're wrong, people will help correct your identification. Besides helping you learn about the things that you find, another great reason for using iNaturalist is to be a citizen scientist. This information helps scientists with conservation efforts, with how climate change is affecting areas, and with how invasive species are spreading. We are all gathering that data for them and helping with this massive scientific effort. I actually grew up afraid of spiders. The more I learned about them through iNaturalist, the more I became not afraid and even to love and adore them. They are one of the most beneficial creatures on the planet. When I got into iNaturalist and identifying, I was making mistakes, and the wonderful community on iNaturalist would help correct me. They would explain why I was wrong. And I took that information and would look it up and study the spiders and find out more. The more I studied and learned, the more I would use that information and help others and identify more spiders. And then it got to the point where I have people from around the world asking me to help them identify their spiders. So I've been learning about worldwide spiders. Now I study the behavior of spiders, and I really have become an expert, and I continue to learn every day.
Okay. So hopefully you found that somewhat inspiring. I think for me, the fact that you can find so many interesting species in a field of Scotch thistle and cheatgrass and some other not so desirable plants is pretty inspiring. And it just kind of shows, if you go around in even a small weedy area, you might find something that you don't expect. So now we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of how you actually use iNaturalist. It can be accessed through the website, which I'll show you in just a few minutes, and also the mobile app. So the website is really great for making identifications. So if you want to help identify those observations uploaded by others, that's where you would do it. Also, if you use a traditional camera rather than a cell phone for taking photos, you're going to upload those through the website. And it's also a really great way to explore things like phenology, life cycles. There's just a lot of data there, and I'll show you that later in the presentation. The way that most people, or I guess most commonly people are collecting observations or photos or sounds is through the mobile app. And so I'm going to walk you through that first, and then we'll talk about the website. But the beauty of iNaturalist is in its simplicity. I'm not someone who has a lot of patience for technology, particularly when I'm in the outdoors. I want to have a technology that really augments and helps my experience rather than takes away my focus from the outdoors. And that's one thing I really love about iNaturalist. You simply record it through a picture, whatever it is. It can be any living thing or once living or evidence of a living thing. You share it, and then behind the scenes, people will help identify it through discussion. So I'm going to walk you through how to use the app on an Android phone. And these are screenshots from my phone, which is an Android. And so as I scroll through these different screens, if you have an Android phone, it will look like this. But if you have an Apple, it's very, very similar. And on the next slide, I have a couple photos of what it would look like. So just a few things to note. So these are the number of observations and the number of species observed. And these are going to change as you have more photos and also as those get identified to species level or as you put in a new species. And this is how many identifications that I've actually made. So if you're going to add a new observation, the first thing you would do is click this little plus down at the bottom. And I believe on an Apple, it says observe. And then it's going to pull up this screen, which has several, sorry, my cat's making trying to make an appearance here. If you can have no media, which means that you don't have a photo, you don't have a sound. Obviously, for scientific purposes, that's never going to be useful because there's no way to verify it. But I find sometimes I use this when I have a first of the year bird that maybe I couldn't get a photo of. I will just put no media and then type it in. Again, that's just going to be useful to me, but it is helpful for me to have that observation going forward so I can compare year to year. You can also take a photo. So if you click this middle one, it will take you to your phone's app and just take a photo instantaneously. Once you do that, it'll ask you if you want to use it or not. So you can keep practicing. It doesn't automatically upload. You can choose an image from your device that's already been taken. Today I went for a walk down in Barber Park and I actually recorded some sound. The frogs were just singing. I honestly don't know if they're frogs or toads. I'm hoping that someone will help me. But you can record sound. So this is really great for bird songs. And you can capture that. And as you know, we have climate change and all these other ambient sounds that are maybe altering bird songs. That might be an important thing going forward in the future. And then you can choose a sound. So in this case, I took a photo. So then the next screen, here's my photo up here. Notice that you can add more. I think you can add 5 or 6 photos total. And as she talked about in the video, it's really nice to have photos from different angles. If you're doing plants, to have, if it's blooming a flower, the whole plant and a close-up of the leaf, multiple different scales, whatever you might be able to do. And then the next thing here is what do you see? And this is where the AI that she talked about comes in. So if you click that, it's going to come up with a whole bunch of suggestions that the artificial intelligence comes up with. And I'll show you again what that looks like. A few other things, you want to have the date and location, and I'll go over these in detail. The next step to add an observation is just to click the OK button. Oh, sorry, I forgot I did show you this. So I did click, let me go back one. I did click, what did you see? And here, these are what the artificial intelligence came up with. So sometimes if I'm not really sure, I'll go with the genus. So I always just default to what I'm most comfortable with. I don't want to mistake it to species level if I'm not certain. So, this one said accipiter, Cooper's hawk, northern harrier. And so one thing that's really nice is it'll say it's visually similar and seen nearby, which is really handy. Most likely what you're going to see has been seen nearby, but there may be a case where there's some outlier. For example, like I think there's a summer tanager in town right now. Probably hasn't been seen nearby very much, but now it has. But when it first was seen, it probably hadn't. So just keep that in mind. And then this is the compare. So going back again, these buttons allow you to compare your photo to other photos of those species that other people have taken and that have been positively identified. So you can scroll, all of these are photos of Cooper's hawks. that have been identified, and you can compare it to your photo just to give you a better idea, which is really handy sometimes. So eventually that did become identified as a Cooper's hawk. If you have an Apple device, it looks more like this, although now it doesn't just have the photo, the visual, you also have the sound app. When this was put together, I didn't have the sound app on the phone, but same thing, you just hit observe at the bottom, and then it's going to come up with options and the same basic options that you have as far as the Android device. Just looks a little different. So when you make an observation, again, this is a different observation, but these are two different screenshots from my phone. A couple things to keep in mind is make sure that your location is turned on your device. If not, there is a way you can go in on the website and add your location, but it's very time consuming and tedious. So I would just make sure whenever you're taking a photo that you have your location turned on your phone. Another thing just to be aware of are the options of this location visibility. And I have descriptions over here on the side. I always leave it open, but you do have the option to obscure it. The difference between open and obscured is that open is going to place a marker on the map where as accurate as it possibly can in terms of the satellites that your phone is, connecting to at that point with the latitude and longitude. Whereas obscured is going to look like this middle photo down here where there is a big box and the location of that is just going to be dropped somewhere in that box, just randomly. Private is, again, it's sort of like those observations without any evidence. It's never really going to be used scientifically unless that scientist follows up with you if it's something really interesting. You give them information about where it is because no one else can see that location with the exception of the person who actually made the observation. One thing that's really important to know is that anything that is listed as threatened or endangered is automatically obscured in the app. So they're constantly uploading that list of species, and I've tried it with some of our threatened plants in the foothills. I would encourage you to try it if you want, but it does obscure their location, and that's just to protect that species so that people aren't collecting it illegally or something like that. So something else to be aware of is this question: is it captive or cultivated? So if it is, they want you to check this box, and that is just so that researchers who are really focused on wild plants and animals are only getting those observations versus captive. And there is a very fine line, and sometimes you're not going to be able to tell. So for example, if you're out in a place that burned and it's been restored with, native shrubs, those were originally cultivated. Now they're kind of wild on the landscape, and you probably wouldn't know that. But things, like all of the oaks and maples that are planted intentionally in our parks, things in, intentional planting beds, or pollinator gardens that are actually being tended to or captive in some way, you should check that box. And it's not a value judgment. Some researchers might be just as interested in cultivated plants. One example is those people studying monarchs and milkweed. Cultivated milkweed in people's yards is really important in terms of habitat. So, it's not that it's not important, it's just making sure that the data are as clean as possible. All right, Liz, I'm going to pause here for a second. Does anyone have any questions that I could answer, if there are any?
Feel free to unmute yourself and just
just throw it in there.
Question. Don't have to bother typing.
Hi, this is Michelle here.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you very much. This is really a great explanation. I'm not real tech savvy, and I downloaded the app and stuff, and I'm excited to do it. I did make an observation when I did it. But is there any way we could like practice?
Yeah, for sure. You can, I mean, you can use the app anytime. And do you want to practice as part of tonight, or do you want to?
Well, I think I got it, but to do the nature challenge, we're not really doing iNaturalist. Is that right? Or how is that going to work?
Yeah, I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. So if you hold that question, and then if I don't clarify it when I'm talking more about the challenge, let me know. Okay. And I'll make sure I clarify before I jump off. Great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, this is Cindy. Just a quick question. Can we take a picture on our phone and then upload it to iNaturalist later?
Yes,
Okay.
great question. So yeah, and actually, if you have photos on your phone that have the location information and the date that you've had even before you downloaded iNaturalist, you can even add those as well. And I don't think I mentioned this yet, but observations can include anything that was living or once living. So that includes dead organisms, and I'll clarify why that's important later. But, you know, plants, animals, fungi, evidence of animals, so tracks, scat, shoe marks, any of those kinds of things can all be included. They ask that you avoid uploading photos of people, pets, and potted plants, zoo animals, those kinds of things, because it's really kind of more geared towards the wild. But captive or cultivated plants are okay, but like things like going to a nursery and taking a photo of every plant there is, you know, discouraged. Oh, any other questions before I move on?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great question. Okay, so now I'm going to just show you what an observation would look like on the website, and then I'm actually going to jump to the web shortly and leave my PowerPoint just to show you a couple really cool things. But so now I'm off the app and I've logged in to the web, and I'm looking at one of my observations of Oregon grape. And I just wanted to show you some of the things that are available on the web that you don't see on the app. So first of all, there's this really great map here, and the green dot in the middle is my observation, and all of these red dots are other observations of Oregon grape. So you can see where it's been made kind of along the foothills here. Another really interesting thing here is under annotations, and this is something that you can really only add on the website. So if I added this Oregon grape, then I could put in the plant phenology. So whether it's blooming, you know, seeding, I can't remember what all the options are there, but you have several options for plant phenology. If it's a plant with a sex, so you can choose that. And then projects, you can either add to a project, or oftentimes people will automatically add it. So there's a really active group in the Idaho Amphibians and Reptiles. And they often, any amphibian or reptile will immediately add it to their project and help you identify it. They're really awesome. So that's something that your photo may end up in a project that you didn't even sign up for because someone else found it useful. And then this is all the data quality assessment. So all of these things are really important for your observation to be useful for science, so that it has the date, it has the location, it has photos, so some sort of evidence. And certain of these things have to be checked. Yes, you don't have to check it, it does it automatically. But in order for your observation to become research grade, which means that now it's kind of ready to go out to the scientific community to be used for whatever research purposes they may want it for. Okay, and if you add photos on the web, you click this upload button. So if you have it on, you know, a traditional camera, and then you can just add them all here, drag and drop them from your computer or your drive, whatever you're using, and batch upload them here, essentially. So I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to do a new share, I think, because I want to show you what it actually looks like. And I can stop here too if there's any questions, but let's see. So I want to share and I want to share this. Yeah. Okay. Are we all back? Everyone back with me on this new screen? Hopefully.
Yes.
Looks good.
Okay,
There's a little,
thank you. You never know what it looks like out there in Cyberland. All right, so what I did is I am now just at iNaturalist.org. And this is so powerful for so many reasons. I just really love playing around with this. But these are all the observations around the world. So far, there's been 424,000 species documented worldwide. And when you click on this, they're organized by the most observed, all the way you could scroll down for all of them, to the least observed. So our mallard, no surprise, probably is the most observed globally. Western honeybee is up there as well. And many, many common species that we have right here in Boise globally are the most common. But one thing that's really fun to do is that you can filter this by all different types of things. So let's say I want to know the birds that I'm going to see in Hilo. Oh, let's see, maybe Hilo's not a place. Let's just be a really good place to go. Let's do Honolulu. That's got to be in there. We'll do Honolulu County. There's more places to search for, but we'll just do that because it's easy. And I want to know what birds I'm going to see there in February because I'm going on vacation. I'm really not, but maybe. So here we go. Here's the birds that, this is like your really quick guide if you're planning a vacation and you want to think, what am I likely to see? So these are all the observations that people, in the area have uploaded. And so of course, they're not going to be the rare species, but they're what, walking around you're most likely to see. And you can do this from anywhere in the world, almost. If we look at all the observations on the map globally, you can see that, all around the world, this app is being used and people are uploading their observations. So it's pretty neat that way. And there's other things that you can explore. There's guides to all different things if you wanted them. But I really like using this Explore, and sometimes I'll even just use it to look at, what species are present if I'm doing a bird walk or something. What species am I going to see at Hyatt in December? And you can pull up a list just like you would, I guess, on using eBird, but it's a little bit different because it includes the visual aspect. So let's see, I'm actually going to prep here for just a second. And I'm going to log in here so I can show you one other aspect. Okay. Now I will come back to that, but I'm going to jump back over, let's see, stop share and do a new share again. Thank you for your patience with this. Share screen and go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. So this is what I was just showing you with the observations globally. So we can skip ahead a little bit, and I kind of showed you that. But I did want to just point this out. So I mentioned earlier that you can include images of deceased organisms, and this was captured when I believe it was the avian flu was really, really impacting pine siskins at feeders, particularly. And so, apps like this can be used to help track disease when people are photographing dead birds in their yard. It can be really powerful that way. And one of the uses when in terms of dead organisms is to help with siting wildlife overpasses and underpasses. There's actually a project that's focused on roadkill, and it can be that kind of information can be used to try to, change speed limits, put in lights in certain places, all kinds of things that you may not think of when you're, taking great pictures of live birds or live organisms that where they pass away could be interesting as well. And then I also just wanted to show you what it looks like when you upload sound. Of course, you don't have a photo, but this is the sound of an eastern phoebe that someone had uploaded. One thing that I set up a few years ago is a project in most of the parks in Boise. And I found this interesting. This was just a year gap. So last year there were 296 species that were documented in Catherine Albertson Park. And this has been a while since I pulled this, but there's probably more now. But we're up to 325 species in that park. So again, if you're going to visit a park and you're curious as to what you could see, you could just type in Catherine Albertson Park and it will show you all the species that people have observed there. Okay, so the next step, so you have the observation, and then what happens is that observation has to get verified. So you may have put in what you thought the species was, and that's great. You may know exactly what it is. But for iNaturalist to consider it something called research grade, other people need to confirm your identification. And as you can see here, there's some criteria to become research grade. It has to have evidence. I mentioned that earlier. The location and date. It can't be captive or cultivated. So only things that are wild can become research grade. And 2/3 of the identifiers have to agree on it. So going back to my Eastern Carpenter bee observation that I mentioned at the beginning, I just want to show you what that process looks like. This was my observation. And then I know this text is really small, but I just want to show you a little bit what the discussion looked like. So I put in large carpenter bee and someone commented, does it go this far west? And someone said, no, but I don't know. And then they asked me if I was sure that it was in Boise, and yeah, it was in my backyard. So anyhow, it's really fun just to have other people interested and commenting on your observations. And in some cases, people who are true experts. I'm not an entomologist. I'm very interested in entomology, but to have entomologists, some cases across the globe, making comments and helping me with my identifications is really energizing. And I don't know, it makes me really excited to see what else I can find. So what does this process look like? So going back to the website, once you log in, you can click on this identify. And in fact, I'm going to, one more time, stop share and reshare going back to the web here. So this is what I was showing on that static, but I'm just going to show it live. So I'm now on the iNaturalist web. I've logged into my account and I want to identify. I want to help some people. So I click on identify, and I don't want to just identify anything random. I'm going to filter by birds, and I'm going to filter by birds in the Boise area. And I'm going to update the search. So I'm not going to put myself on the spot by actually trying to identify any of these, because I know many of you are really great birders. If I looked at this picture of the robin, maybe I could do that one. But these are all the birds in the Boise area that still need identification. And so you can just click through these and look at the photos. I mean, that looks like a robin to me. Probably enough to agree, but I'm not going to do it right now. So you can just click agree if you know that that's a robin, and by that you can help others move their observation along. Or you could make a comment and say, no, that's not a robin. Do you notice this or that, or the beak, or whatever it may be? And so you can become part of the conversation. Now, if you don't feel confident at all in your identification of any of these, this is a really great option. These are all the things that people haven't put in any way to identify it, not plant, not animal, nothing. Maybe it's because they, they're not sure, but you can just click through these, and I'm assuming that's a ladybug. So you could type in, instead of unknown, you can help identify it and add insect. So there's lots of ways that you can help people identify things. You don't have to actually know what it is. You can just give them the very base level. And by doing that, you help their observations fall into the right buckets so that those entomologists or expert birders or botanists can help identify, because right now they're not going to fall into plant or animal or anywhere at this point. Even if you can just divide plant and animal, that would be really helpful for all of these unknowns. And you may notice some of these, the photos are not really the best. And that's one thing to keep in mind too, is that if you don't have a really clear photo or a clear set of photos, then it might be really hard for people to help you identify. All right, let's see where we are here. Oh, this was what I was just showing you. Okay. So now let me just see where we're at in time. Okay. So once your identification or any identification becomes research grade, meaning that it has that location, it has data in some way, either a sound or a photo, it has a date, and it's been identified by 2/3 of the people that have interacted or made a comment on it to the species level, then it will eventually get batch uploaded to this, which is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. And this is a free clearinghouse of biological observations that then are organized in a way that researchers can easily access them in order to be able to use them for whatever research they're conducting. It's used globally. It's funded by a variety of governments across the globe, and anyone can access it. So if you're curious to check it out, there's lots of maps, really interesting resources. But this is, all those observations always stay on iNaturalist, but then that information also gets sent here and where it gets used. And there are thousands of papers now that have been written using data from iNaturalist. Some of the ways and some of the projects that people use these data for are listed here. So we talked about wildlife crossings already, but phenology is a really huge one. So taking pictures of the first blooms of a lot of the plants so we can understand how climate and maybe bird migration and phenology are all interacting in ways that are in sync or not in sync with one another. And mapping invasive species is another really important use of this, where you can track where people are seeing certain species, whether it be plant or animal. So now we're on to the City Nature Challenge. So the City Nature Challenge started about, I think it was in, I think 2017, 2018, somewhere right there. I have it on the next slide. As a competition between San Francisco and LA to see who could find the most nature using iNaturalist. So it was the same weekend it is now, so the end of April and May, because that was an ideal time in those locations to go out. And over those 4 days, they challenged each other to see who could find the most nature using iNaturalist. Since then, it's grown to include over 450 communities across the globe who are still going out on those 4 days to take a snapshot of biodiversity across the planet by using iNaturalist. Here we go. 2016 was the first year. So this is the graphic they put together last year. And last year there were 455 cities. We found over 50,000 species. I would really like to point out that this osprey picture here was taken by a local Boise volunteer, Kim Chimura, and that was taken at, I believe, either Williams Pond or Loggers Pond in Marianne Williams Park. But you can see how the event has grown over the years. And this year, I know there's going to be at least 450 cities that are finishing the final count. One fun thing to look at is how this event impacts the number of observations on iNaturalist. So those spikes are the City Nature Challenge. iNaturalist has to really put in a lot of time beforehand to prep so that they can take in all of these observations without crashing the system. And I really also like to see how, just the number of users over time is going up and the number of observations. I guess this observations, not users, but it's increasing over time, as well as the spike in the City Nature Challenge. So it'll be interesting to see how many observations come out. Now, those people in the low latitudes kind of have an advantage because their weather this time of year, or really most times of the year, is pretty nice. Our neighbors up north that really have a rough time with it now because, we feel like we still have a lot of snow. Many of those places, there's not a lot to see at this time of year, but there are communities all across near the equator and in the far north and far south. So the City Nature Challenge, the official dates are April 28th to May 1st, and that is when you go out anywhere, and for our map, it's anywhere in Ada County. So you don't have to be right in the city of Boise. You can go out to some of the desert areas. As long as you stay within Ada County, it's going to be included in our project. And you want to take and upload as many photos of wild organisms as you can. And I would encourage you to try to find as many different organisms, not necessarily taking a picture of every rabbit brush plant that you come across, but as many different things as you can find. Of course, it's fine to have a few of the same species, but we're really looking to try to document biodiversity as much as possible. And then between May 2nd and 7th is when we're really trying to encourage those of you that are experts, maybe you're a botanist, to try to help identify all those photos in Ada County that have been uploaded. The other thing that's also really important to note is that if you have photos that have been taken between April 28th and May 1st, and you haven't had an opportunity to upload them by the end of the day on May 1st, you can still upload those until the 7th and have them count for our project. They just have to have been taken in those 4 days, the 28th to the 1st. I hope that makes sense. So you just have to take your photos that day. If you don't get them all uploaded, you can still upload them until the 7th to have them count for our totals. This is a screenshot of our project on iNaturalist. So it's called the Boise Metro area. Dinez from the Idaho Department of Fish and Game created this really cool graphic with the peregrine falcon, which is sort of our mascot for city and nature, since they nest right downtown Boise. You can join the project if you want to. It's not required to join it in order to participate. As long as you make an observation in those 4 days in Ada County, it will automatically count towards our project. So you don't have to worry about joining, but you're welcome to join it if you want. And this is where all our observations will show up. That's just the map of Ada County to give you an idea. You can go out south of Kuna. Blacks Creek Bird Reserve is in there. So lots of really interesting places to go explore. And just a couple other things. Guidelines I already kind of talked about, wild organisms. So please avoid the 3 Ps, people, pets, and potted plants. And make sure you mark it if it's captive. And I think I already talked about those other things in terms of when to make observations and identifications. And of course, always be a good steward, be thoughtful. Some birds are starting to nest. So just be cautious into where you're going and what you're taking photos of. A few last tips in terms of taking photos. You want to have multiple angles if possible. The closer, the better. But if you can get different parts of a plant or an insect from different angles, that's really helpful for people who are trying to help you identify something so that they can really get those details of the photos. All right, so events. Next Friday, we're going to be doing a nature walk starting at the Boise Public Library. It'll kind of wind through a part of Julia Davis Park and through the Rose Garden around, seeing what we can find. We're doing a BioBlitz at Marianne Williams Park on April 29th. That's going to be an all-day event. We'll have a bird walk first thing in the morning from 8 to 9:30. And then from 10 to 11:30, Roger Rosentreter is going to lead a plant-focused walk. And then in the afternoon from 12:30 to 3:30, Paul Castrovillo, who is an entomologist, is going to help us try to identify as many insects as we can throughout the park. And then Liz, maybe you can add some more at the end here about the GAS walk on the Bethany Church Trail. I didn't know any of the specifics of that, excuse me, but you're happy to jump, or you're welcome to jump in and provide those details. So that is my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have, and thanks so much to all of our partners and to those of you for joining us this evening. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Wow, Kristin, that's awesome. That's super great. Woohoo. Woohoo, woohoo. That's just amazing how many species people see. And say the Hulls Gulch one again. I mean, you didn't say it, you skipped it.
The Hulls Gulch.
You have one on you got the Marianne Williams, and then
oh yeah, I'm sorry. There is a walk at the Foothills Learning Center, and I don't know if that's full yet. I haven't seen. I know they had a good, but it's in the activity guide. And also, if you email me, I can send the information to you. But it's also on the iNaturalist project page. There's a link to the sign up on the web. So if you go there,
and you can do as many as you want. And
you can do as many as you want.
And the Golden Eagle Audubon, we're going to be hosting a walk along the Bethany Church Trail. We're birders, so we're really used to going slow. And so we're not going to get down to the part that's underwater right now. It's on May 1st in the morning. And if you follow that link in the chat, or if you go to our webpage and our calendar on May 1st in the morning, and you can sign yourself up for that. You have to register as a volunteer. So there's a few steps if you're not already in our volunteer system. But we'd love to have you in it. And we'll have people, we'll be both talking about the restoration that's been going on there, as well as taking those pictures. Hey, so Kristin, it sounded like people could get out there with like their super fancy cameras and their long lenses and stuff and take like champion photos, and then they come home. So instead of like doing iNaturalist in the field, they bring them home and do them through the web-based thing. Is that how that works?
Absolutely. Yes. And I should mention too, just in case if anyone is concerned about this or interested in this, you can set different settings for your photos too, in terms of Creative Commons or copyright, or how you want to set that up for your particular photos, if that's something that you want to make sure that you have the rights to. So there's different ways that you can do that. Great question. But yes, you can use your fancy long lens if you want.
Yeah, I was like, wow, those people are getting awesome photos on their cell phones. Other questions from anybody else, or?
Yep, this is Michelle. I have a question.
Yes.
So when you take your picture and then you see, you put your guess in, and then they come back and verify it, then it was uploaded. Do you think?
You should know if you I'm just sorry, I'm not texting someone, I'm just pulling up my app so I can describe it while I'm looking at it. So once you upload it, it should be in your list under observations.
Right.
And then once someone has interacted with it, there's like a little symbol off to the right. When you first upload it, it's going to say 1. And then when someone interacts with it, it's going to turn pink or some
Okay.
color, and you'll have 2 there or 3 there or something like that with however many people have interacted with that. And I would say that sometimes it really depends on the species and your quality of photo. Some things that I upload, especially birds, thank you to all you birders who are identifiers. Oftentimes it takes an hour and someone will have identified it and it's research grade. Other things take a long time, and
Okay.
some things that have been, a year, they still haven't become research grade
Oh,
yet.
wow.
So
Okay. Yeah, it's a
it-
big process.
It
Okay.
really depends on how many identifiers there are for that particular, taxon, and how many, how interesting your photo is to people. Certain things, like geese and all those, they're going to get ID'd really quick because they're easy to identify. It really just depends. But as long as it's in your list of observations, then it should be there. Yep, it's out there just waiting for the right person.
Okay. Okay. And then, so in order to do City Nature Challenge, you don't necessarily have to sign up, or, yeah, I
Nope.
didn't get that. So, but
Anyone
you,
who makes an observation in Ada County, it will automatically get pulled into our project.
okay,
So
good.
some people
That's
will be
easy.
participating without even knowing it, but we'll take them.
Okay. So does it know your name? And I mean, it knows kind of the location.
It will just show your username. So the cool thing about when you look at that project screen, the one that had the peregrine falcon on it,
Right.
once it starts populating with observations, it will have the leaderboard. Paul Castrovillo, I think, was the leader last year.
Wow.
He had the most observations. So you can see, just by their username, who has the most observations and the most species. So, I'm a little competitive, and I know Kim took that picture with the osprey, and the trout is very competitive. So I think there's going to be a few people really trying to get out and get as many observations as they can of different things. So it's always really fun, fun
Yeah.
event, and fun to see what people find.
Great. Well, thanks very much for doing the Zoom meeting
Oh,
and
thanks for
answering my
coming.
questions. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And feel free to send me an email if you have any more questions. So.
Okay. All right.
Michael, do you have a question, Michael?
Yes, I do. The Bethune Church Trail Walk. I joined the Golden Eagle Audubon Society, I don't know, several weeks ago. And I was looking at different events and activities, and I looked at Bethune Church Trail Walk, but I thought maybe it wasn't that one, but I thought it was waitlisted. There was that?
That was, we do a regular bird walk there. And so this isn't the bird walk. This is a little mini bio blitz. So we are going to be recording for iNaturalist on this, and we will be looking at snakes and plants and moths and butterflies and spiders and stuff like that, as well as also paying attention to the birds.
Sure, but do we need to register in advance, or is there a certain limit, or
Well,
attendees?
yeah, use that link, and we would like you to sign up so we know how many people are coming.
Okay,
And there is a limit, but it has not been reached yet.
okay, good.
And just email me or call me or whatever if somehow it's too confusing or too annoying.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you will.
Okay.
Thank you. Love to see you there. All right. This is awesome. I'm going to get it onto the Golden Eagle YouTube page sometime tonight, tomorrow morning. And so you could send other people to watch it if you want to have a partner while you're out there doing this, April 28th to May 1st.
Awesome.
Let's give
Thank
a big
you.
thumbs up to Kristin. That was super. That was a mouthful, but that really
Thanks,
helped.
everyone. I really
us
appreciate
plan.
it. And I put my email in the chat just in case anyone needed it. And send me an email if you have any questions. And thanks again for joining us. I can't wait to see all your observations out there.
That's right. Okay, everybody, good night.
I-
Well.
Thanks.